I drove 14 hours from Denver expecting silence, pine air, and the peaceful lake ranch my grandfather left me. But instead I found diesel fumes, construction noise, and several enormous mansions sitting directly on Morrison family land. The shoreline I remembered from childhood summers was gone, replaced with imported stone walkways, luxury docks, and perfectly manicured lawns belonging to people who clearly believed this land had always belonged to them forever. Before I could even process the theft happening in front of me, a white Tesla rolled down the hill and stopped beside my grandfather's old cabin like it owned the place completely. The woman stepping out carried herself like royalty inspecting peasants. Wearing designer athleisure and holding a thick legal folder that suggested this confrontation had been planned long before I arrived. "It must be Russell Morrison's grandson," she said casually, glancing toward my grandfather's old wooden cabin like it was some embarrassing historical mistake someone forgot to remove. She introduced herself as Vivian Ashworth, president of the Copper Lake Estates HOA, and apparently the self-appointed ruler of the entire shoreline community surrounding this lake. Her first sentence after that introduction arrived with a confident smile that instantly told me this situation would become something far more serious than a misunderstanding. "Actually, sweetie," she said, tapping the folder against her palm confidently, "this property belongs to us now, under adverse possession law, so you might want to look that up." I had just driven 14 hours expecting inheritance paperwork and peaceful memories, but instead I was standing in front of a stranger claiming she legally stole 900 acres. The Marine Corps teaches you a habit that never disappears. No matter how many years pass after service, observe everything carefully first, react slowly later. And the moment I started observing, I realized Vivian Ashworth had made a very large mistake, assuming I would simply sign papers and quietly disappear. Because inside my truck sat the one thing she clearly never expected to face: 70 years of Morrison family land records, proving every inch of this lake still belonged to us. I walked back to my truck slowly, opened the tailgate, pulled out the heavy metal lockbox that contained every deed, survey map, tax receipt, and legal document my grandfather preserved. Vivian watched with mild amusement, clearly convinced whatever I carried would not change the reality she had already built in her mind. Several homeowners had gathered nearby, drawn by the tension between a returning landowner and a confident HOA president who believed the land dispute was already finished. I spread the documents across the hood of my truck carefully, each page protected inside plastic sleeves that preserved signatures dating back to the 1950s. The first document was the original land purchase contract signed by my great-grandfather in 1953, when this lake was nothing more than quiet farmland. The second document was a certified county survey, clearly marking every acre of shoreline property that had remained legally unchanged for 70 years. Vivian glanced down briefly before shrugging dismissively, like someone pretending evidence did not matter. She claimed the neighborhood association had maintained the shoreline openly for years, while the Morrison family abandoned the land. According to her explanation, landscaping improvements and dock construction somehow entitled the HOA to claim ownership through adverse possession law. That explanation sounded confident, but it ignored several legal requirements necessary for adverse possession claims to succeed, requirements my grandfather had already anticipated decades ago. I flipped to the next document slowly and turned it toward the gathering homeowners. It was a property tax record showing continuous payments made by Russell Morrison every single year without interruption, even during the years when he was too sick to travel here personally. The homeowners began whispering quietly among themselves as the realization started spreading through the crowd. Continuous tax payments destroy adverse possession claims almost instantly. Vivian's confident smile weakened slightly when she noticed the whispering. I pulled out another document. This one was a county notarized shoreline use agreement dated 6 years earlier. The agreement allowed temporary recreational access for local fishermen under strict conditions. Those conditions specifically prohibited permanent structures like docks, retaining walls, or residential development. Every mansion currently standing on the Morrison shoreline violated that agreement. Vivian's expression shifted from smug confidence to visible irritation. She insisted her attorneys had reviewed everything before construction began. I asked her politely which attorneys had approved building half a neighborhood on privately owned land. She refused to answer that question. At that moment, a black county survey truck slowly drove down the dirt road behind us. The driver stepped out carrying a tripod and rolled survey equipment toward the shoreline. Several homeowners looked confused. Naveen looked nervous. The surveyor introduced himself calmly as a representative from the County Land Records Department. I had called them 3 hours earlier from a gas station 30 miles away. Before arriving at the property, he began setting up equipment to confirm the original Morrison survey boundaries recorded in county archives. Vivian tried to interrupt, insisting the HOA had already completed a private survey years earlier. The county surveyor replied politely that only official county boundary confirmations held legal authority in property disputes. Silence fell across the shoreline as the equipment finished calibrating. The surveyor walked along the waterline, slowly placing bright orange boundary markers in the soil. Each marker landed several feet inside the lawns of the expensive lakeside mansions. One marker appeared directly in the middle of a recently installed outdoor kitchen. Another marker landed beside a luxury hot tub overlooking the water. Homeowners began staring at their patios with growing concern. Vivian Ashworth stood frozen, watching the markers appear. The surveyor finished his measurements and approached us again with a clipboard. His voice remained calm but direct, according to official county records. Every structure built within 60 feet of this shoreline sits on Morrison family property. That statement spread through the gathered crowd like electricity. Few homeowners immediately began checking their phones, likely reviewing their own property purchase contracts. They've even attempted one last argument, insisting the HOA had community easement rights. I handed the surveyor another document. It was a notarized easement termination filed by my grandfather 8 years earlier. The document ended every temporary shoreline agreement the HOA had ever received. The surveyor read it quietly and nodded. That easement ended before any of these homes were constructed, he confirmed. The silence that followed felt heavy and final. Vivian looked around at the homeowners who had trusted her leadership. Several of them were no longer standing beside her. Instead, they were staring nervously at the orange boundary markers planted in their expensive landscaping. One homeowner asked quietly what would happen next. Kay answered honestly. The Morrison family now had the legal right to demand removal of every structure built on our shoreline property. That included docks, patios, retaining walls, and portions of several lakeside homes. The financial consequences would be enormous. Vivian Ashworth attempted to speak again, but no one listened. The homeowners had already begun realizing how badly the HOA leadership had failed them. One by one, they started walking away from the shoreline meeting. The surveyor packed his equipment calmly after documenting every measurement. Before leaving, he handed me the official survey confirmation report. The document carried the county seal verifying Morrison ownership across the entire shoreline. Vivian remained standing beside the empty dock long after everyone else left. Her earlier confidence had completely disappeared. I packed the family documents back into the lockbox slowly. The lake looked peaceful again for the first time that day. Vivian finally asked what I planned to do next. I told her the Morrison family would consider several options carefully with legal counsel. One option involved demolition orders for every illegal structure. Another option involved land lease agreements that would cost the HOA millions. Vivian understood immediately which outcome homeowners would prefer. The following week, the HOA board requested an emergency meeting with my attorney. By the end of that month, Copper Lake Estates signed the largest private shoreline lease agreement in county history. Every mansion owner would now pay annual land fees to the Morrison family. The docks and patios could remain exactly where they were, as long as the people living there remembered whose land rested beneath their foundations. And every time I visit the lake now, the shoreline is quiet again except for the small metal plaques each homeowner installed acknowledging Morrison shoreline property rights.